What's going on, guys? Welcome to the Word on the Street. It's been a long time since I've been on camera, and today I am joined by another person who hasn't been on camera for a long time. Corkin, what's going on, man?
What's good?
I don't know if people know about a running joke, but yeah, it's been a long time since been on camera, and today we wanted to discuss about a very important topic. You know, with all that's going on in the world, people keep asking themselves, where is God? And that's a question that is asked throughout the centuries, regardless of where you are, what you believe in. You always ask, where is God when something goes wrong? So today, that's what we're going to tackle. But before we do that, Corkin, I was reading something on Reddit. You know, I always go on Reddit because, well, that's where you find most interesting things.
Reddit fun.
I think I live on Reddit. But this is what I read, right? So I was on this Christianity subreddit, and this is a post that came up 2 years ago. So that's 2021. And that person posts this with the subheading with the same title, Where is God when I need him? The first line is deep. In fact, the first couple of lines are deep. But I'm just going to read just a few lines, and then we're going to go into it.
Need to prepare myself for this deepness.
Yeah. So the first thing that starts is, where was God when I was being abused by my father? So when I read it, I'm like, this guy went straight into the deep stuff.
I'm already nervous. Okay. Continue.
So the next one, where was God when my mother was being yelled at and almost beaten by her boyfriend? Where was God when my brother was born with a disability? Where was God when I needed him? Where was God when I prayed for him to help me fix things? And now I'm beginning to wonder, does he even exist? I stopped believing in God, and there's some expletive here, a long time ago because of this. And when I was reading this, it got me thinking, like, there are a lot of people who believe in God or grow up and then start believing in God. Then they get baptized or they come closer to God in somehow. But along the way, that question comes to them, where is God? And usually comes because something has happened in their life. And with all that's going on, like, we can't escape it. We're not trying to be political here, but we cannot escape what's been going on in recent times, with all the whole Palestine and Israel.
Yeah, I think that question of where is God, especially when you meet someone that has that sort of story where so much bad things have happened in their life out of their own choice. So it's not like they went out and made mistakes and these things have come into their lives. They're just living, and then all of a sudden, these things are happening. You start to ask yourself, what am I doing wrong? Where are you, God? And as you said, like, there's so many random terrible things happening around the world. Right now, I think the war happening with Israel and Palestine. We have people living in poverty all around the world, and so many natural disasters that are actually messing up the world. There's actually recently in the UK, there's been like a storm going around, and people actually lost their lives.
Yeah, like I was a bit shocked as well. I woke up one day and then the trains were cancelled. And then I'm on, when news breaks, you don't go to the news. You always go to Twitter. Yeah. Twitter has all the news. And all I'm seeing is that...
It's not Twitter, it's X.
X, yeah, of course. Yeah. Sorry, Elon Musk. And then I'm finding out people, they're in their car, a tree falls on the car, and then they're in A&E. And then you wonder, what has somebody done to deserve this? They haven't deserved any of that.
I think it's also quite, if you think about it in terms of the people that are affected, you can't help question, like, where is God in this, especially when it comes to like loss of life. Yeah, like, God, this person did not deserve any of this. They still had their whole life ahead of them, and yet all of a sudden their life is snatched away. One morning, they're waking up, they're moving, next thing, trees fallen in their car, something's happened, an accident, and they've lost their life. And I know families, I've had stories of families where they are devoted Christians and they have believed in God their entire life. They have been, let's say, baptized, they serve God, they love God, and all of a sudden something tragic happens where their family gets into, or their relatives, their brothers, they get into a car accident, they lose like 3-4 family members, and all of a sudden they can't bring themselves to believe that a God that's so loving, a God that's so caring
could do that to them,
could allow this to happen to these kind-hearted people that they knew. And it's very hard to comfort someone in that situation and try and tell them about the love of God, that God is still there and He cares for them when they've just went through such tragic loss. So it's a tough one. I ask myself that question all the time, like, why is God when I'm going through different things? I don't know if you've had that situation as well.
Look, ever since the pandemic, I've asked myself that question more times than I can count. You know, the whole saying is, if I said this, if somebody gave me £1 for every time so and so. So if somebody gave me £1 for every time that I thought about it, I wouldn't be a millionaire.
You'd be a billionaire.
But I've asked myself that question many times. And people, I think one of the things that people don't realize, or at least people within our community do not realize, is that I feel like the closer you get to God is when that question starts creeping in deeper and deeper and deeper. Because it's as if the first time when you experience love for the first time, and then for some reason you feel that love has abandoned you, it hurts even more. And for me, I always look back and think, yo, God, have you just led me this far to abandon me? Is this where it's leading to? I've done this, I've done that. And I know people say you shouldn't say that you've done this for God. You shouldn't expect things or do things expecting something in return. But that question pops up a lot.
Yeah.
And I've seen it pop up a lot recently as well. Like, I've got a lot of friends who are Muslims, right? And for them, this recent events has impacted them a lot. And even they keep asking themselves as well, like, look, we do this, we do that, we keep everything. We try to act in the best way possible, but things are not going around well. Is there even a point even following God? So this isn't just a question that's for Christians. These are questions that's for everybody. You led to believe, you grow up believing that there's this divine being that's there to protect you.
Yeah.
But where is he when you need him? That's what people are asking themselves.
That's true. And you said something that I quite like to highlight. That you say, as you get closer to God, this question becomes more and more apparent. Like, you start asking yourself, where is God? And I can't help but draw contrast between, like, let's say, people that you care about the most. Like, let's say your family or your sisters, your friends, that as you get to know these people, you have certain expectations of them. You're like, I know you're this sort of person. I know you're caring. And when they do something bad to you, it hurts more than a random stranger. And I think that's where it becomes tougher. Like, when you get to know God, understand God, and you care for God, you start to understand His love and everything that is done for you. And when bad things happen, you're like, why are you doing this to me? Why are you allowing this to happen to me? Because we do believe that God does permit certain things to come into our lives, whether to teach us like a lesson, or whether to help us develop. But sometimes you're like, I don't need this experience, you know. It's like, I'd rather not go through this if I can avoid it. And you start to ask God, why are you letting this happen to me? Because it's coming from someone you care about. So it is a tough one, because I feel like the closer you are to God, as you said, the more apparent it becomes and the more hurtful it becomes, because you have certain expectations of God. Obviously, God has certain expectations of us, but you're led to believe that God is all loving, all caring, and that He wouldn't allow something like this or tragic to happen to you or to the people you care about or to your family. So it's a very tough question to answer.
And I think that's why it's easier for people to believe that things happen by chance. It's easier for you to believe that something just happens by coincidence, or something happens because you have there's nobody controlling it. It's just a combination of chaos that's come together, and this has happened. But if you believe that somebody is in control of everything, you always ask yourself, why is this happening? And I think that's one of the reasons a lot of people these days find that, let's be honest, this is why the reason why people find faith, Christianity, all those things, they find it meaningless. It's like, how can you believe in a higher authority and then He allows these things to happen to you? I know you touched upon it. God allows certain things to happen to us to strengthen us or to galvanize us. But then that begs the question is, why can you be a person who in your perspective, you've done the right things. You're living a good life, right? Good life in accordance to your faith. And then all these things happen to you. Why? Like a sub question within this question, where is God? Is why do bad things happen to good people?
Yeah, that's even another bigger question to tackle.
Because, like, what I want people to understand right now is like, we're not here to answer the question, like to give a definitive answer. Because if there was a definitive answer, then people throughout the centuries would have been asking these questions all the time.
Yeah.
But if somebody came to you and says, look, these things have recently happened, and it's not just these things before. For example, I can go back during the pandemic, the George Floyd incidents, somebody losing their life because of their skin color, right?
Mm-hmm.
People losing their lives because of their sexuality, their gender. For example, like, I won't name the country, but I was recently in a place where women, they're fearful to go out, especially at nighttime, because the things that may happen to them. So imagine being in those situations and then asking yourself, like, what can I do? I pray every day, but I cannot go out in confidence because I don't believe that God is going to be there for me.
So I want to ask you a question. Is there a time you feel God had forsaken you?
You have. I already touched upon it when I said that in the last couple of years, especially since the post-pandemic, I have felt like God has been drawing away from me. In fact, I even preached a sermon about it in Glasgow, where I was like, I felt like, I was emotional on that pulpit. I was
emotional for you. On the pulpit.
I was emotional because I was like, I was wrestling, man. In my mind, I was like, every time asking myself, has God left me?
Mm-hmm.
Does God not want to support me anymore? And in those last couple of years, I was especially in the last 2 years, I was struggling a lot with my own mental health because of that. Because I kept asking me, I'm a person who likes to be in my head a lot. I think a lot.
Mm-hmm.
Like, you could say something, and then I try to analyze the word. Like, what tone did he use? How did he? Did he look like he was shouting, yelling,
Mm-hmm.
or when he looked at me, what was his body language like? And I overanalyze all these situations. And when I feel like the love of God or God has left me, I spiraled down into this mental state where I didn't want to communicate with people. I know, look, there's a lot of people who've asked to say, Benjamin, you don't come to gatherings. It's not because I actively choose not to come, right?
Mm-hmm.
I'm just in that mental state when I'm like, what is the point?
Of all of it?
What was the point in this? Because I've tried my best, but God is not hearing me.
Mm-hmm.
I pray every day. And it got to a point where, I'm going to be honest, it got to a point where I went months without ever praying. Because I thought to myself, like, look, I'm not going to suffer for something that's not, somebody that's not going to hear me. And I had this argument with a debate with my mom. My mom is reminding me, like, and there's a verse, the sermon I preached was on Psalms, and it was in Psalms, the first half was talking about how has God forsaken me, he withheld his goodness forever. But then in the second half, he talks about remember.
Mm-hmm.
And he's talking about the Exodus when God took them through the Red Sea, in the wilderness, pillars of fire, all sorts of things. And my mom would always say, Ben, remember where God brought you from? You're an immigrant in this country, right? It's true. You're an immigrant in this country. You didn't come here and suddenly everything was nice and dandy. You didn't know English. You went to school. You had to start school, and you struggled because you didn't speak English.
Mm-hmm.
And at the same time, she reminded me, like, look, and because you're an immigrant, because of where you came from, you were mistreated by some people, right? But remember, you came through it and all of that, and you're still here.
Mm-hmm.
There are some people in different nations who may not have been able to get through that, or it may have led them in the wrong path, or even, unfortunately, in some cases, it leads to people losing their lives.
Yeah.
Like getting in gangs, especially in like we hear in the streets of London.
Lead you down a different path.
So my mom is trying to remind me of all these things, but
You're intimidated.
I'm not hearing any of
You're
that.
just going in one ear, coming out the other.
Because I'm like this to my mom. Look, mom, this now I'm looking back at it. It sounds hilarious. I'm like, mom, what I want is for God to turn up at my doorstep like Moses in the burning bush. I will hear nothing else until God appears to me like that. That's what I wanted.
That is actually a very important thing you say, because we ask God to show Himself to us, but in a very specific way. And sometimes I wonder whether that's wrong to expect that, because like in if we'll go back to the story of Gideon in the Bible, when God was telling him to go, was it fight the?
Yeah, I can't remember the but I know he pulled out a
Don't judge
fleece.
us for that. Yeah, he
And
asked
then-
God to essentially prove His power or whatever. So, and we know like the miracles, they make the fleece wet and then make the side dry and all that, and He done that almost like 3 times. So sometimes I wonder whether, anyway, if I got that story a little bit wrong, forgive me. But I also sometimes wonder whether it's wrong for us to ask for like the unexpected, like the big things, like God, I want you to do this. I want you to come with a burning fire or whatever. But it's always important to remember that sometimes you want God to prove Himself. Like, maybe that's a bad word to use, but you want God to show Himself to you because you are in a period of searching. And it seems like you are like in a period of searching, or where you wanted God to essentially come and show you that He's still within your life. He's still guiding you, even though you may not seem like it. And did you get that?
I'm gonna be honest. Like, it'd be nice for me to say like, and there was a happily ever after.
Yeah.
But I'm still at that stage where I'm still trying to discover like what God was God saying to me. And I think one of the things that has helped me to realize that is that the people around me, right?
Mm-hmm.
I know I said I wanted a burning bush experience. I'll still have a burning bush experience. But the people around me, sometimes I look at it, and once I've digested what they've said, later on I'm like, yeah, they had a point there. They had a point. If I change my perspective and see it a different way, then my mind starts to open up a bit more, and then I realize that, yeah, God was speaking to me in a different way compared to the way that I wanted Him to speak to me.
Yeah.
And that also gets me to another point. Like, sometimes people want like this wow experience with God, but even when they do get it, they still question. They still go, where was God when for example, like when Jezebel was after Elijah, right? Well, what did he do? He ran away. After seeing the God destroy the prophets and all that stuff. He still ran away because he was scared. Even though God had proved Himself right before his very eyes. Yeah. Right? He was still scared and he ran away. And I think it's within our human nature that we always want proof after proof after proof after proof in order for us to begin to understand that, like, yeah, God is still there. And I think once we get into that spiral thing where we want, even though Gideon got the proof that he needed, are you always going to request for that? When you want God to show Himself, when you want God to answer the question, where are you?
Yeah, it's one of those ones where you're like, you're always looking for reassurance. Because I feel like because if I reflect back on my own experience, like, I think what you said, I resonate with it a lot, because I feel like we go through a lot of problems, we go through a lot of things that you wonder, like, where are you, God? Especially when you even look at your friends and like the people around you and all the things that God is doing for them. But instead of taking that as reassurance that if God is powerful enough to change these other people's lives, surely He can do that for me as well. We take it in a way where we think like, God, you're doing all these things for these people. Why aren't you doing this for me as well? Like, you turn the entire experience into a negative experience when you can actually draw strength from other people's miracles, from other people's testimonies. And I think what your mom done was, is she's reminding you to look onto your past, because that's where we can draw the ultimate strength. Because You cannot undo the past. You can see where you came from and where you are right now. That it's not been through your power. It's been through the power of God. It's giving you strength to endure all those things. And also, I think the other important thing that I would want to highlight is that the people around you, as you're saying, they have their own testimonies. Sometimes when I feel low and I feel like God has abandoned me, I feel like, damn, and I've tried so much and nothing is going the right way. I'm not in a job I like. I'm not having this thing that I want to have. I sometimes look at other people's lives and they'll tell me, I would ask them and they'll be telling me with a smile on their face what God has done for them, how far they've come. And I'm like, wow, that is amazing. God is amazing. I'm drawing strength from their story, although that's not my reality currently. And I live with the belief that if God can do that for them, as they've been telling me that testimony, they didn't believe they will be where they are. But now here they are with where they are with what they actually wanted. And God took them through that. So I draw strength from that and say, you know what? God can take me through the problem that I'm suffering right now. He's not missing. Although I'm not seeing it in my own eyes and I feel like I'm suffering, I go with the belief that it's working in the background, that God is still here and is working in the background. I just have to continue doing my part and still walk in faith. It's hard. Easier said than done, but it's very hard. But it's a daily thing. You have to constantly remind yourself.
Yeah, because even when you look in the Bible scriptures, right? I feel like we have this problem where we present every biblical character as this amazing guy who, when they found God, they never wavered. They were on the straight and narrow. They never faltered. Moses disobeyed God, right? David, man, don't even get me started on David, man. The things that he did, he killed another man so he could be with his wife, right? Or at least he wasn't the one who did the killing, but he put the man in a position.
He plotted.
Yeah, and he plotted against him.
Premeditated.
But this is a guy who then God still said that he was a man after his own heart. And while we find it, let me see if I can find it. So, what I was looking for was Psalm 77, I believe.
Mm-hmm.
Let me see if I can find it here. Let me see. Because one of the psalmists, we know it was written, the Psalms, most of them are written by David, right? And the psalmist, the one other reason I like about it is that it doesn't just go tell you about the great things.
Mm-hmm.
A lot of the things are like the psalmist questioning God, asking himself, where has God been? Where will God be? And that's why I really love that book, because when I was looking at it, it reminded me of the times where I questioned God, and then God has finally come through.
He's still waiting.
I'm still waiting.
But he's coming through. Coming through.
So let me show you the first part. It's like the first part, the psalmist goes, I cried out to God with my voice, and he gave ear to me. In the day of my trouble, I sought the Lord. My hand was stretched out in the night without ceasing. My soul refused to be comforted. I remember God and was troubled. I complained and my spirit was overwhelmed. At the bottom he says, I meditated within my heart, and my spirit makes diligent search. Will the Lord cast off forever, or will the Lord leave me forever? And will he be favorable to me no more? Has his mercy ceased forever? Has his promise failed forevermore? And the last bit, has God forgotten to be gracious? And has his anger shut up his tender mercies? Like, we often portray the Bible as people who are steadfast, right? And they were steadfast. But they also go to those points where they ask themselves, like, has God shut himself off? Has God gone away from me?
Mm-hmm.
But then the psalmist goes on to say, he says, I remember, and this is when he starts to recall an event he wasn't even part of in the Exodus, right? And he says, the water saw you, O God, the water saw you, they were afraid, in relation to when God parted the seas. The clouds poured out water, the sky sent out a sound, your arrows also flashed about. The voice of your thunder was in the whirlwind, the lightning lit up the world, the earth trembled and shook. Your way was in the sea, when he took them through the sea after he parted it. Your path in the great waters. But yet, I think this is the thing that opened my eyes.
Okay.
And it wasn't just reading it, right? I was listening to a show called The Chosen, and the way it was recited, sometimes when you recite the Bible back, right, not just as if you're reading a memory verse, but you recite it back and try to convey the emotions in it, that's when it hits you. The last bit, and your footprints were not seen. And when we ask ourselves, where is God?
deep.
Where is God? This reminded me that God is working behind the scenes,
Yeah.
but his footprints may not always be seen. You may not
Mhm.
always see that he's working behind the scenes.
Yeah, it's always like that famous picture. I don't know all the story where it goes like people like there's a picture of someone walking on the beach. I think walking on the beach, and then they're walking with God. Things are going good, and you see two footprints. But then when they're suffering, they start to see one set of footprints, and they start to think God left them because now they're just their own footprints. But what they don't realize when they show you at the end of I don't know whether it's a picture or like a story, but the only reason there was one set of footprints is not because God had left them, but God was actually carrying them. And those footprints are God's footprints. So that kind of just reminds me of what you just said, that sometimes God is working, we just don't see it. It's just working in the background. He was carrying you on his shoulders, but for you, you think he
abandoned you. Yeah.
He abandoned you. And it's a very tough one. I'm not saying this wrong to ask yourself, why is God in my life? Because we see even Jesus, when he was ready to be I was about to say sacrificed.
Well, technically it was a sacrifice. It was
crucified. Let's not say sacrifice. Crucified.
But in the whole imagery of things.
The whole imagery of things. He asked himself, God, why have you forsaken me? Like, my Father, why have you forsaken me? Like, it's not a question that we can run away from, because Satan is going to throw a lot of things at us. And with our mind, we're going to think like, God, where are you in all of this? Where are you in my suffering right now? Because sometimes we look at the world and we say, this is going wrong, this wrong. But the ones that hit the most is when it's happening to you personally. And ask yourself, God, if you don't do something right now, I'm probably not going to walk with you any longer. And you start coming into those moments. And I think those are the important times we need to even seek God more and go down on our knees and start praying. Because there's times when, as I said, times where I did not feel like praying, but I would just go on my knees and just say a simple prayer, like, what I'm going through. I don't want to say much. And then I'll go to bed, or I'll leave my prayer there. And that alone just reassures me that no matter what I'm going through, I always go on my knees and just, whether it's 5 seconds, 1 second, if I don't feel like talking to God, I'll still ask God, like, what I'm going through, give me strength. I don't see you right now. I don't know I'm going to make it through the next day, but give me strength so that I can keep going long enough to see you do wonders in my life. And as I was reading, I actually have a quote here that I quite liked, and it said, sometimes God permits what he hates to accomplish what he loves. And for me, that really touched me, because with all the bad stuff that we go through, or that we feel like God is permitting to happen, what happens at the end once we've come out through that, let's say, refinement fire, is that we're people that are able to articulate God's love. We're not necessarily just intellectually know about God, but we actually feel God, and people can see it on your face that, wow, this person is truly walking with God. Not because you woke up one morning and you realize God is amazing, and because of what you went through, you're able to acknowledge God's love, and whatever you do, you radiate that. People can see that. And sometimes when we reach that stage, we may forget that, I had to go through this to be here. And that's when it's quite important that we need to have a heart of endurance. And, the Christian journey is not an easy journey.
It's not a 100-meter sprint, man.
It's not a 100-meter sprint. It's a marathon. And marathons are hard and long. So when we do ask ourselves that question, it's important to just get closer to God. No matter how hard it may be, just try and seek to get closer and closer to God. Because we know down, he's not actually going to forsake us, but it's the devil trying to play with our minds. Yeah. It's a tough one.
I don't have much to add on it, but this may sound ridiculous to some people, right?
Is it gonna sound ridiculous to me?
Maybe it probably sound ridiculous to you as well. But everyone knows I love football, right?
I never noticed.
And one of the player that got me into football was a guy called Ronaldo, Brazilian Ronaldo.
Mm-hmm.
And I was watching a documentary of his recently. In the build-up to the World Cup, they were just showing a few things, right? And one thing that sometimes it feels weird that I'm looking at this story and I'm saying it inspires me. But one thing that I love about the story, at least the stories that's presented to me, is the fact that his knee literally exploded in one. It was gone. I think this was 1999 or something.
Mm-hmm.
He didn't play football he barely played football for 3 years. For 3 years. And then he came back to the 2002 World Cup after 4 years later, early having suffered a seizure in a World Cup, before a World Cup final.
Mm.
And he came back. He finished his tournament as a top scorer, scored 2 goals in the final for Brazil to win the tournament, right?
This is tournament. This is the World Cup.
This is the World Cup, yeah. And you know something happened, right? I remember that some of my friends know that I'm a big fan of his. So they was like, Benjamin, look, you're a fan of this player. Look at the struggles he came through, and he never gave up.
Mm.
He never gave up, right? And this is just for football.
See.
Imagine if you put that mentality into your own life as well, right? Don't give up just because things go wrong. And in his interview, Ronaldo said, they asked him, what did you say to your coach after you won the World Cup? 4 years earlier, he had said to himself that he asked God, like, give me an opportunity just to try one more time. 4 years later, he wins the World Cup and he hugs his coach and he says, God has been good to me, right? I know this is just a football player. I don't know him personally, right? And I don't know how his faith is like. But the example that I get from it, right, is that despite all the things that have happened to him, in the end, when he had come through all it, he was able to say, God has been good to me. How many of us can say that? And just to wrap this up, like, before that when I was younger, right, I caused a lot of trouble in school, right? I caused a lot of trouble in school.
Okay.
But one year, I came back to school after my teachers used to send me out all the time, like detention, all these other things. This was before I came to the UK. So when I went to another school, and little I didn't know that my mom was speaking to these teachers behind the scenes, fighting for me, saying give him another chance, help him out, right? I never knew this. She told me years later, right? Because one day I turned up to school and things were better. The teachers were giving me another chance when I was scared that they would never give me another chance. But my mom was fighting my corner behind the scenes, and that's why that bit in the Psalm says your footprints were unseen hit hard, because I've seen it in my own life. My parents fighting my corner. I never saw them do it, but they were doing it. And God is exactly like that. He's fighting our corner, even when things seems to are going badly.
Yeah.
And one day,
it will all be revealed.
It will all be revealed. It may not be in our lifetime, but
it will be there.
It will be revealed. So, have we really answered the question, where is God? Where is God? I think it's a question that's going to be asked for centuries. People are always going to ask this. But I think one of the important things is to remember, like, you don't have to see God to know that He's there. He's there. He's doing things behind the scenes. And all these things will work out for good for us. Not immediately, but later on.
Yeah. I think just to the last moment things just to add on there is that to remember that even though we don't see what God is doing, it is shaping who we are at the same time. So it's essentially just when you ask yourself the question, where is God? This is the advice I need to take myself as well, is that we need to remember that we need to keep running the race. You will not get you then get a chance to see God's true work if you drop out of the race. So I think that's the most important thing as Christians, as individuals out there, that you may believe in God, you may not believe in God, that we need to keep running that race. And at the end of that race, we shall truly see God's power. We shall look back and see how far we've come, although we wanted to give up, like, miles back, but we somehow managed to get the strength to get to where we are at the end, to make it to the end. So we need to keep on trying to pursue and be like David, a man after God's own heart. Despite whatever may be happening, we need to just try and get closer to God. Because I know that question, whenever it creeps into my mind, I just know Satan is trying to plant a seed of doubt that if I let it fester, it will lead me away from God completely. So we just need to remember to try and get closer to God every time we ask ourselves that question. I think that's the principle I try to apply. And I hope that, people try and apply that as well.
And I think it's through conversations like this, podcasts or in person, or amongst your friends, people you don't know. If you have conversations like this and let people know that where you are at, it also helps people to see that God is working in their lives. And just to end on this, like this literally hit me. I got a bit emotional, right? Because sometimes my siblings just text me randomly, right? Imagine I'm supposed to be the older sibling. I'm the older sibling. So and they text me saying, "Benjamin, we believe in you."
Oh,
that stuff hits me.
I don't know if my siblings are watching. That's what you got to do.
No, but yeah. So sometimes I would draw. Like last year, my brother sent me a message saying, I think they could clock that I was not in the right state of mind. They sent me a message, like I know it sounds it get weird. After we had finished watching our cup, they were like, Benjamin, did you send me a message? Benjamin, look, there are players that you're watching that do not give up. You don't give up as well because we believe in you.
Oh wow!
So I was like, yeah, that touched me. And I think when you're reminded about these things, God works in little things like that, moments like that. It doesn't have to be big things. You don't have to always have the burning bush experience.
Yeah, you don't have to look for the big.
It's always the small things. But I hope people at home can be inspired by what we've just, our discussion we have. This is an ongoing discussion. Questions like this are asked for centuries. And I don't think in our lifetime we'll ever have a concrete answer to it. But we can inspire others. And thanks, Cocken, for coming on again.
Thank you for being here.
First time on camera in a long time. And we're the only ones in the studio at the moment. We're filming ourselves. But
they don't need to know that.
But it's the first time we've been on camera for a long time. And we're just going to keep this rolling and get some good discussions going. And don't forget to comment in the sections below and give us your thoughts. Or give us an experience of when you've asked your question, where is God? But for now, thank you for coming to the Word on the Street, and we'll catch you on the next one. See you.